Welcome to the Dark Zone, an adventure racing podcast.
We came up with the name The Amazons Australia because we want to show or encourage women to see their full potential. Like the concept of an Amazon is a strong, powerful, courageous woman. And we believe that adventure racing, if you're not that, when you first start doing adventure racing, you are by the end.
Well, for me, the action is the juice. I'm in.
Say the word, Chef.
Let it rip.
Welcome to the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens, episode 119. And today we have a returning guest, Kim Beckinsale, who, as I say this, just finished up the Legend race down in Tasmania, courtesy of Chris Dixon and Wild & Co. Her team, the Mountain Designs Wild Women, went inside the top 10 and were second female team overall. So congrats to Kim. Before she headed off to Tasmania, we recorded this episode where she talks about her racing. She talks about her work in both the Magnificent as a referee and as a racer in Tasmania, but also as the race director for the Amazons Australia coming up this July, an all-female stage race, which she is putting on. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being a listener. Sit back and relax. Enjoy this episode of The Dark Zone. And remember, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking.
This is Bob Miller, founder of Wilderness Traverse. I'm inviting you to join us in July 2025 for our classic Canadian 30-hour adventure race. We're proud to have been selected as the Adventure Racing World Series North America Championship and are excited to welcome the continent's best teams to compete for the Bob the Beaver Trophy and free entry into the 2026 Adventure Racing World Championships. Just 4 hours north of Toronto, Sudbury offers an epic wilderness experience with forests, rugged trails, and abundant lakes. With the World Champs this September in British Columbia, this is the year to race in Canada. And here's a great bonus for our U.S. neighbors. With the strength of the U.S. dollar, it's great value for an incredible experience. Visit wildernesstraverse.com to register.
Imagine a world where young women in Afghanistan and Pakistan rise above societal constraints, embracing their strength and potential. Ascend Athletics is making this vision a reality. Through mountaineering-based leadership training, Ascend empowers girls and women aged 15 to 24 to become courageous leaders in their communities. By conquering physical summits, these young women build self-esteem and develop skills that last a lifetime. Operating since 2015 in Afghanistan, expanding to Pakistan in 2023, Ascend focuses on regions where gender inequality is most pronounced, providing tools for girls and women to lead empowered lives. Join the Dark Zone in supporting these brave young women as they climb towards a brighter future. Visit ascendathletics.org to learn more about and contribute to this transformative mission. And remember, Ascend pays nothing for the spot. We love the work that they do, and the Dark Zone is happy to support it. Welcome to the Dark Zone Adventure Racing Podcast. This is your host, Brian Gatens. Returning guest today, one of our favorites, other side of the world, Kim Beckinsale, who, as you remember from a previous episode, was part of an all-female team that won a big race, huge race, first time all-female team winners. She'll talk about that. I'm not being coy. I'll ask her about that a little bit. Kim is here to talk about a race that she is helping to support, put together, she's involved in, called the Amazons Australia. And so I am grateful for her time today from around the globe. We have Kim on the show. Kim, welcome back to the Dark Zone.
Thank you, Brian. It's great to be back, and it's certainly great to hear your voice and still projecting out to the adventure racing world and helping to connect us all. So thanks for having me today.
Before we get into the race we're going to talk about and the races that you've done, tell our listeners a bit about yourself, your own experience, because you have a lot of adventure racing and outdoor experience.
I think I've been adventure racing per se since about 2004. I did my first race, so we're just sort of around about just over 20 years. I really have enjoyed the sport so much, and I've had now the opportunity to race in very successful mixed teams and more recently all-female teams. My work history is a health and PE teacher, and one of my passions early on from high school years has been endurance sports and outdoor education. So my other teaching area, so in phys ed when I was studying, was geography, and I think the fact that when you're doing the sport of adventure racing, it's such a it's such an amazing environmental and just visual experience as well, just connecting with nature. And I think all of those little things in my background just help to make the sport so enjoyable for me in particular.
So all the pieces add up, right? And I love the fact that you brought in the idea that when we're adventure racing, where we are so invested in nature during it, right? Especially during a big race, a 24, 36, a multi-day race. You find yourself in these huge geographic areas, huge mountains, rivers, things like that. You look around and you're a very small team, right? There's 4 people standing on the banks of a big river. You got to get on it, and nature has taken over at that time. In a recent interview that we did on the Dark Zone, in which I'll link it in the show notes, your all-female team had a lot of success. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the Mountain Designs Wild Women started in about 2017, and we started off with probably some of the most popular races in Australia, such as GeoQuest and XPD. And our goal was just to get together, have 4 females and do an expedition length event and finish it. And so we did that at XPD in 2017, and we've sort of continued to just try and just be the best we can be, have heaps of fun, and continue to, I suppose, push the boundaries of, what we can continue to achieve as we've sort of got older. And in our sort of group of wild women, we've had some really amazing success, but we've also got quite a group of us. So when there are events on, it's about also choosing and finding who's available and making sure that we're all fit and healthy and ready for an adventure. So, yeah.
And then what race did you win this past year?
Oh, okay. So at the
by the way, it's very Australian that I have to drag it out of you. Just for the record, I have to walk you to that. Tell us about your big win.
Yeah, so this year we competed. So the Mountain Designs Wild Women competed in the Legend Expedition Race, and it was in Victoria on the Great Ocean Road. So the Legend Expedition Race sort of took over from XPD, and it's sort of going on a lap around Australia. So we did the first one in Jindabyne, which is New South Wales, second one in Victoria. So the Wild Women had best race of our career in outright winners of that event. And it was, such a high, and something that I personally would not have ever dreamed having, to achieve such a result. So, and I think everyone in the team felt the same.
We had a great interview with you and the team not long after the race ended, and I'm going to have a link in, like I said, in the show notes to that. And so folks who want to hear about that race, I'll direct them back in that direction, because that was just such your team was so joyful on the episode and so much fun talking about it, who they were as racers and how you came together. And it felt like a huge capping off to years as a team of training, working together, and all the pieces, we know that they all matter. They all came together during that race. Alongside your racing, you're an ARWS referee, and I think you're heading over to the Magnificent next. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. So my partner Jan and I are heading over there just to help out and, referee at the event. And Jan is more experienced at refereeing than I am. So she's done both of the Legend Expedition races, heaps of GeoQuest, and a lot of the local Oceania series events. And it's something that I suppose in all my sporting connections or clubs or things I've been involved in, not only have I raced, I've always given back to the sport in some other way. And I find it's just a really good balance of, because you just can't do all your time training, even though you might want to. You've got to have a bit of something. And and I think both Jan and I love that opportunity to race, to coach, but then also, to give back to the sport in a variety of ways.
Well, you're right about that, right? That's spot on. I mean, adventure racing at a very high level is hard because it's a lot of time, it's a lot of effort, it's a lot of capital. You got to get to different places. So people who are into the sport, they find other ways to volunteer. They volunteer as officials in races. They get certified that way. They work as volunteers. They help on the planning side. They volunteer in either on single days or over the course of weeks. And you're right, like for a lot of people, and this is for the folks out there listening to the show, there's adventure racers, people who just simply, they race, they go home, they race, they go home. But there's a whole cadre of people who wrap themselves in the community. And before we started recording, we were talking a bit about that, right? About the types of people that adventure race and who's involved in all that. And it's great to see you heading over to a new race, right? The Magnus brothers are putting on a race called the Magnificent. And you're going to have a chance to be a witness to that first time doing that, first time that race happening here. You mentioned that Jan is more of a more rough experience than you have. What do you, when you are involved in that side of the sport and you do pay attention and you're involved in the TAs and you see the teams pass through transition areas and you watch the race, what have you learned as a racer when you've been involved in a race in a non-racing capacity? What has it taught you?
I think it's taught me that when you're sort of on the other side of racing, that, you definitely need to be, fair and consistent, encourage people just to keep going and to focus on just being a fun person with them rather than sort of overly officious, because everyone's out there just wanting to have a great experience and a great time. And, over the years being involved in, a variety of sports, sometimes when, you don't want someone to see an official and be scared by them. You want them to actually enjoy the connection with everyone at the event. And I think that's what we love about adventure racing, is that, as you said, it is a community of people. And so when, you see your volunteers that are manning a TA, or you're seeing your, search and rescue people out on the course just giving you a high five to say, yep, you're doing well, no matter where you are on the course, it's just helping those people get from the start to the finish, because sometimes there's not that much human interaction apart from just other teams, and you can go for hours and hours and hours without seeing anyone. So as a referee, I suppose my thing would be just to be, be as positive and helpful as possible.
It's true, and we could do a whole episode on refereeing, and maybe when you're back from the Magnificent, we'll talk about that. But I 1,000% agree with you that a referee during a race plays a special role, because whoever he or she is, whoever that person is, they obviously they're in charge of fair, consistent enforcement of the rules. We know that, right? And that applies to the entire race, but it really applies to the point end of the race. The first people who are fighting for the podium, the top spots, and they have to make some hard decisions about penalties, gear being lost, all of that. But away from those hyper intense moments, the referee turns into I call them like a TA therapist. Like they walk around, they're not race staff technically, right? They're separate from the race because they're impartial. Yeah. And when they walk around the TA, they carry a lot of weight in encouraging people in terms of stoke. Like, you're going to be okay, get some food, put on some dry socks, get back out there. And they become like these counselors to racers, and they carry a lot of weight. And I like the fact that you brought that to the podcast today, because that human interaction plays a huge role for racers that are having a hard time and they're really struggling. And when a race official is encouraging and is kind and is, prodding in a good way, a lot of races are saved that way. And I think you'll probably and the Magnificent is going to be a tough race. So you're going to have a lot of experience helping people along in that course. So aside from your work there, there's a race coming up in Tasmania. Talk a bit about that for 2025.
Yeah, so the Legends expedition race is in its third year and moving to Tasmania. So Tasmania is a very little rugged country right at the bottom of Australia, and I have done 2 XPDs there before and some stage races and back in the day, a little bit of triathlon as well. So I love the ruggedness and the landscape, and it's certainly going to be the event director, Chris Dixon, has already put out some nice little videos just recently of some of the course. So it's going to be very exciting. And for us wild women, we're sort of hoping to, just go out and have a great race. And the aim is every time you race, it's just to try and complete the course, find all the checkpoints and have a great time. And then whatever else happens after that is just your bonus.
Right. And if it works out, if you're at the top of the podium, well, great. It worked out that way, right? All those other pieces came together and you end up doing really, really well. We're excited for that. Now, when is that race going to be?
So that's the 1st of March it starts. And, we're heading down just a couple of days before.
So you have a busy January at the Magnificent, and March you're going to be down in Tasmania. Yeah.
So New Zealand will actually be quite good because we're heading over a couple of weeks early. So before the race, before the Magnificent. So I will also be able to get a little bit of cool training because in Queensland it's very hot at the moment. And so in New Zealand it's, much cooler overnight temperatures and a lot more hilly terrain. So just in that, month before the Legend race, I just get a bit of extra conditioning and acclimatisation for the sorts of conditions that I could face in Tasmania.
There's another big race you're involved in this year. So you had your racing success in the fall, right? Congratulations there. You're involved in the Magnificent as a referee and a judge. You're racing, right? You're racing in Tasmania, but then also we have the Amazons Australia race. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so the Amazons Australia is a new event that my partner Jan and I have conceived. We have run a successful all-women's race in Queensland, sort of on the Sunshine Coast, since we've been running it since 2015. The first year it was 2012. So we came up with the concept of an all-female race. And so in Australia at that time, there had never been any all-female racing. So we knew that there were some races in New Zealand that had been successful. So we started that, and that's humming along beautifully at the moment. So after our Legend expedition win with the Mountain Designs Wild Women, I've sort of had this thing in the back of my mind, and Jan and I have been talking about, putting on a stage race because we've always I've liked the expedition races probably as I've got older, but Jan always loved stage races, and there haven't been that many of them. And so we sort of just had this little seed in the back of our heads. And then after the Legend race, we thought, we just had this click moment. Why don't we do a women's stage race? Let's just do something for women because, for some reason, maybe stage races hadn't been that popular. And we thought it's sort of like that next step to go, right, I'm not quite ready to do an expedition race, but I want to do multi-day race. And we also wanted to create an event that was sort of hard and tough, but had a few niceties at the before and after. So we came up with the name the Amazons Australia because we want to show or encourage women to see their full potential. Like the concept of an Amazon is a strong, powerful, courageous woman. And we believe that adventure racing, if you're not that, when you first start doing adventure racing, you are by the end. And so the name sort of came out of that. And the Amazons Australia is just meaning, it's about going into battle against others. The Amazons used to just go off and, do their thing, all but in the daytime. And in those days, there wasn't this stuff that happened at night. There was like a truce. Everyone would get back together, have a chat about what had happened during the day, and then they go out and do it all again the next day. So that's sort of like the atmosphere we want to create where, you start the event, everyone's out there, going head to head, and then everyone finishes and it's then quite social and just repeat. And then at the end of it, have a big, finishing ceremony to say, wow, look at what you've done, look at what you've achieved, look at where you've come from. The other thing with the Amazons is that we are catering for a range of women. So there might be some women who are complete beginners who have, not done that much, but they want to step up from, a 6 to 8 hour race, and they want to be able to do, 3 days in a row. We also then, want to be able to, like we do with our Wild Women event, is cater for the top, the top women in the sport. And the way that we have some experience in creating and designing courses is to allow for that to happen. And, and then the last thing about the Amazons is our location. So we're having the event up in the tropical North Queensland, a little location called Mission Beach. So it's on the Cassowary coast. And so it's part of what's called the, North Queensland tropics. And so we've got that island concept as well. So with the Amazons, historically there's been, Amazons going out and paddling over to an island and, stuff like that. So it's sort of, we couldn't do the event right here because we just thought, no, we want to start the Amazons up, somewhere that's, tropical and, beautiful as well.
There's so much great stuff here, and the theme going into 2025 is the idea of the stage races, right? So you have Natalie Long with her Raid the Rockies, which was very successful. She's bringing that again. Mark Latanzi is bringing out Cerberus, which is a stage race that he's putting on, and now your stage race is coming on. And so it sounds like there's this, and stage races aren't new, mind you, but I mean, there's now an increased growth. Before I ask you, I do want to dig into the logistics of the race a bit, because there are people at home whose ears perked up who may want to consider coming out for it. So I'm going to have you sort of give me all the numbers. What is the race's connection to ARWS before I get into that?
So the event is part of the ARWS Oceania series. So there hasn't been a stage race in that series before, and there hasn't also been a women's event in the ARWS. So that's our, I suppose, moving on from the Wild Women, the Mountain Designs Wild Women doing so well, that other little piece is just to sort of then, have a women's only event included in the ARWS is... it's just something that's new, something that's exciting, and hopefully going to just empower or encourage more women to sort of go, oh, there's, this is a great spot for me to start. And whether women want to continue to race just in all women teams, or whether they then go, right, I'm ready to jump into a mixed team now. I've got some basic skills. I feel confident, competent, and I'm going to go to that next level. So that's, I think, what our, what we want, the people that are coming into the sport a little bit less experienced to gain from competing in the Amazons.
It sounds like there's multiple reasons why you're putting the race on the way you're putting it on, right? The idea that first off, let's be honest, you're an excellent race director, right? And you and Jen have put on a very good event for everybody. So there's faith in the quality of the experience. There's also having an all-female race creates a community that builds on itself, because we do know the numbers have shown that adventure racing is a male-dominated sport. So by having a female-centered race, you're helping to grow that part of the sport. Am I grasping that correctly?
Yes, that's correct.
And then obviously the third component you have there also is that there's a scale of performance ability, and so you're creating a race in which people at various levels folks who are newer to the sport will have access to the sport, will do their best, will have a good experience, will leave feeling good, and then people at the top end will have a greater challenge along the way. And that's the nice thing about when race directors do it right. They create courses that are accessible to a wide variety of people, and it sounds like that's what you're focusing on. And of course, it's in a beautiful area of the country, and everyone's going to have a great time. So give me some logistical details.
Yeah, so the event is being held from the 6th to the 10th of July. So it's in the winter months of Queensland, but it's the perfect weather for up in North Queensland because the water's actually really beautiful to swim in at that time of year, and the temperatures are perfect for racing. So it's not too hot, not too cold. And the event is a stage race. So we do all our pre-event everything on the 6th. The racing itself is from the 7th to the 9th. And then teams, if they want to stay around for a holiday and spend some time exploring the tropical North Queensland, they can. But then we organise the finish day is the 10th. So teams would be probably leaving then. Mission Beach is about 2.5 hours south of Cairns and about three hours north of Townsville. So international competitors can fly into Cairns International Airport. It's got heaps of flights in and out. And from interstate, people from Australia can choose whether they fly into Cairns or Townsville, depending on what works. But they're big airports.
Is it teams of four? Is it twos, threes, fours? Like how are you divvying? Are there solos? Like how are you divvying that up?
Oh yeah, so the event is a team of two. So we decided rather than go for fours, when we have done our all women's races in the past, we've just done teams of two. So the Amazons Australia is for teams of two. And we also know that sometimes when women are entering events, they might have 6 friends and they all enter as 3 different teams of 2, and they all sort of travel together. But it's easier just to find one other person to do the race with, especially when you're sort of, for some people that are getting into it. And again, I think for a stage race, logistically, sometimes it is actually easier just to organise 2 people, because at the end of each day you've got to pack and get sorted again and pack and get sorted again. It does make it a little bit easier just with 2.
Have you shared so the stage race concept is great, and as Natalie's interview, it came out on that, and I've talked to Mark about there are certain challenges for the stage racer. Like when you're doing a multi-day race, the race starts, and for 4, 5, 10 days, you're kind of in the bubble of the race. But when you stage race, you go into the bubble, you come out of the bubble, you rest, recharge, and you go back out there. Have you shared with the racers the length of each day stage, and will there be nighttime navigation? Like how does that? What have you shared with the racers so far?
Yeah, so what we've shared, and again, we wanted the event to be achievable. So the course each day would be 6 to 8 hours. That would be our plan, that most people would finish within that time. There would be a cut-off time that is by daylight. So we wanted there to be no need for night racing, but teams, we would make them still carry a mandatory light, for
just in case,
safety
in case they get
purposes.
stuck out there. Sure,
yeah,
sure.
But they don't have to. They're not going to. There's no night navigation as part of this event. And 6 to 8 hours per day. And the way that we sort of would do the event is that there would be mandatory checkpoints that everyone has to get to complete the course. And then we would do optional checkpoints along the way, which makes it strategic and exciting because there can be different people at different times connecting throughout the course that you sometimes don't know who's actually in front.
Got it. Of course, yeah, because on a race course, you never know where your team is in relation, who missed a checkpoint.
Yeah.
I first off, I am in love. I'm in love with this format. You're telling me I get to go to Australia, race 8 hours a day, good hard 8 hours, don't get me wrong, be done, rest, relax, hang around the campfire, chat with my friends, and then do it again the next day, and again the next day. It sounds like a dream race. I'm not going to lie to you, Kim. Like, holy cow, what a wonderful experience it's going to be for someone to come down and do that. And the fact that, like, you're making it so accessible to the newer racer by taking away some of the barriers in terms of the nighttime trekking and things like that. What are the primary disciplines that we'll have built in there? Is it the normal stuff, like, or are you adding some other challenges in?
Yeah, so the advertised information at the moment is that there is trekking, mountain biking and kayaking, and within any events there are some added little challenges that can be thrown in that you don't need any extra sort of special experience for. So we'll be just sticking with those three main disciplines for now. And then anything else that's added in as an extra, it'll be sort of like an exciting something that you find out as a part of, the unknown part of the course.
Right. So because part of adventure racing is you get the maps, when you arrive, and you could certainly work a different challenge in there. I know their race directors do a lot of different things. Like they'll put a sneaky little bouldering section in there that doesn't require incredible skill set. They'll have map challenges where a part of the map they have to figure out on their own. So there's a lot that you put on there right there. How has the response been to the race so far?
Yeah, well, so far we've had some really good entries. So our early entries were open from November through to 31st of December, and we've had a lot of interest. So we've probably we're definitely more than what we thought we'd get in that first bit. And we've got people entered from Queensland, New South Wales, I think Tasmania, maybe ACT, and we'd love to see some international competition. We think that we can entice some New Zealanders over to do the event. I think there's some really good flight deals and specials on. We'd love for someone to come from, that top half of the world. And Jan and I actually went over and did Natalie's Raid the Rockies last year in Canada because we happened to be going over there anyway. And we just planned this holiday, and then there was a race. So we changed our flights. Just
pop in and do a stage race. Just pop over and just knock it out.
We changed our flights when we saw that Natalie had a race on, and we loved it. So it was. So
what did you learn as race directors? What teachings are you applying over to your other race?
Yeah, well, we found, because there's so much daylight in Canada, that enabled Natalie to really extend the days. And for our event, I suppose the days are a bit shorter. So, and for this first all-female Amazons event, we didn't want people to have to go into the dark. So we're sort of going for that little bit of a shorter part. But I think going to other people's events, for us going to Canada was just like, wow. And we don't normally see snow, so we got to hike through snow, and we were freaked out by bears. in Australia, we've got different things. So I think you just learn how people do what they do, and you just take little things away. And Natalie put on an absolutely fabulous event, and it was epic, and we loved it. And so for us to be able to do something similar in Australia, and then our target is for women. That we're really looking forward to that.
Yeah, she was a great. I'll link to her episode when she came onto the show, and she was very funny when she talked about how hard it was to like every day like have a race, break it down, sleep, set it back up. She said it was almost easier to do an expedition race, and you may have that experience that you're going to have 3 starts in a row, 3 finishes in a row, and then obviously the maps and the challenges there. But there's no doubt that the strong success of her race in Raid the Rockies paved the way for your race, the other races that are going on. Like I think that's become a really nice gateway race for a lot of people who are ready to jump into the 5-day expedition race, stay awake all that time pool. It's a really strong gateway to get into that. And so that's great. I had forgotten that you had come over and done Raid the Rockies. And I'm sure that was quite the geographic crash course for you, being there with all those different conditions.
And I suppose one thing that, we had sort of flown into the race, and it was, we had a big drive, to get there. And I suppose for this event, we've gone right because we know that there might be some people that, have travelled a long way that don't know the area well. We are, going to make sure that every day the event starts, the meet-up place for each day is going to be right at the headquarters. So we've designed the course so that people won't have to drive a car to anywhere, any remote start. So we organise everything for everyone so that if you are an international athlete or you're coming from a long way and you don't have a car, you can still do the race. And Mission Beach as a location is perfect for that because all of the accommodation is just so close to where our headquarters is. And it's a beautiful little, tropical resort community. And to have an adventure race there for that local town will sort of be really amazing as well. And so it's going to be right in the hub of the little town when everyone's starting and finishing. And whereas I know when we did the Canadian one, we're in the middle of nowhere. And so that experience of other people actually, it wasn't till the end of the race that we were sitting in a little cafe in a service station across the road where we met all these other Canadians finding out about what we'd just done. And they're like, oh, my God, wow. So,
Yeah, I've had the chance to talk with local towns and chambers of commerce about bringing races to their area. And adventure racing is a hard sport to describe in general, right? It's a multi-day race. Everyone who knows what I'm talking about. And what I would tell these small towns, they're lovely and they can't wait to get the races in there. I would always say that the circus is coming to town. That hundreds of people are going to show up. They're going to bring their families. They're going to be with a lot of gear, be wearing a lot of clothes that you haven't seen usually. They'll have maps and compasses. And they'll go and they'll come back, and then the energy and the excitement, and it sounds like that's what you bring into Mission Bay. That by bringing this race there, you're really bringing that sense of you're being ambassadors for the sport. It sounds like that's one of your goals right there.
Yeah, and look, I think traditionally in Australia, some of our very first adventure races were in tropical North Queensland. So Eco Challenge was up in North Queensland. There used to be these events called the Qual that were up in North Queensland. So this is in, like the late 1990s. And, some of a few of the people that we've got helping us out with our event have actually done some of those races up there. And so it's sort of almost like, trying to also pay respect to, with our Amazon theme of where the sport began.
You're going home. You're bringing the race back home.
Yeah.
So do you think you mentioned you've been racing for over 20 years, and you're now putting on, first things, but you had incredible success at the Legend with your all female team being the overall winners of that race. Now you're putting on a multi-day race. I know it's a stage race, but it's multi-day. It's over many days. Mm-hmm. All female in North Queensland. Can you comment on the growth of women participants in adventure racing? What have you seen over the course of your career, and where do you want to go? Like, I'm going to make an assumption here, and I want you to push me towards or away from it. Part of the motivation behind putting on the Amazons Australia is that you want to cast a spotlight on the capacity of women in adventure racing and to grow the sport in that direction. Am I capturing that correctly? What do you want to say about that?
Yeah, I think that there is this perception that adventure racing is too hard, too extreme, and that I'm not good enough, meaning not me personally, but, someone thinking, oh, will I do this? It's like, oh, no, I couldn't do that. And so I think from Jan and I created our little Tri-Adventure coaching business back in, 2009, 2008, for that reason as well. And, certainly not a focus on women, but focus on just everybody. And because we're both females, we tend to definitely have more females that we're helping and supporting and encouraging. But I think with the Amazons Australia, we're really trying to provide, I suppose that opportunity for just women to feel like, there is an event that they can do, that it is all women. You can do it with your friends. Do you have to be a world champion? No. Are you going to have fun? Yes. Are you going to be pushed? Is it going to be hard? Yes. But you're going to walk away feeling, wow, I've achieved this amazing thing, and you're going to want to do more. And I think over my career, unfortunately, I've seen a lot of women drop out of the sport, and I feel like for some reason they might have been pushed a bit too hard too early, or just put through things that made it, that they walked away with sort of like a bit of a bad taste, whether it be injury or just things didn't go well.
Do you think that issue is gender-based? Do you think that they were treated differently because there were women on mostly male teams, and as a result, the standard was set too high for them?
Look, everyone is different, and so there would be some people that, that may not cope with that. So I remember my very first event that I did with a team in an adventure race. So my first ever adventure race I actually did solo because that was sort of an option. But my second one I did in a team, and I ended up, it was a stage race, funnily enough, and it was only ever once up here in Queensland, and I ended up sleeping in the middle of the night in a tent with two guys either side, like of me, because it was so cold. Now, luckily for me, I was in my mid-30s. I wasn't threatened by that, and I was probably, because of my background in triathlon, was probably fitter and faster and more competent than what I thought I was. But that was due to my background in, PE teaching and outdoor ed and triathlon,
your circumstance gave you the strength there. That wasn't a byproduct of the race. That was you.
Yeah, I just had those skills going into it. So I actually had done orienteering. I had the right tick box things. But if I put myself into someone else's shoes, that may not be the case. But the team may have expected them to be that good because there are other females around that are that good the first time they go and race. And so, and even, I'm thinking if I was a 18-year-old female, mm-hmm. would I be comfortable in just jumping into a tent with two other guys? Probably not. So all of those little things that we think that often they're just not even really in your main thought process. It's just about that comfort of how would I go racing for, 4 days with a guy and I'm only a very young female?
Right.
And so, maybe a lot of that's just something that is a barrier straight away that just stops people from even getting into the sport.
And I think also through the race you're putting on, you're creating an amazing race that people are going to be challenged. It's going to be hard, but you're also creating a community in which women can come together and have these conversations amongst themselves in the other 16 hours of the day when the race is not happening. Yes.
And we're sort of going to try and we've got a, it sounds a bit nice, but the event space where we're going to do our pre-event function and our post-event awards is actually sort of like a beach bar / restaurant right on the beach. And so they're setting up a sort of like a happy hour on the beach area for every afternoon. So whether it be the event officials or, some of the athletes, if they just want to sit back, relax and, have a refreshment or get some bar snacks or something just straight away when they finish or afterwards into the evening, it just makes it really easy for them if they want. And again, it's just that concept of sitting down, sharing stories. And we're trying to make the logistics quite easy so that they're not going to be spending hours and hours and hours having to pack and unpack all this gear, so that there is that opportunity for everyone to get together.
When you look back on the sport and you bring so much experience to the table, what do you think? What advice would you give to the sport in general and to race directors to make the sport more accessible for female or non-binary racers, right? People who they fall along a gender spectrum, and we want the sport to be inclusive. We want the sport to be whole. What would you recommend that race directors should consider?
Yeah, so I think I think as an event director, you want the people that are coming to the event to experience success because you want them to come back. And so, yes, you want to have parts of the event that are challenging and adventurous, and that at times you might have to make an assessment as to whether or not that is safe for me or not to do, but you make that very clear. But then you also, I think, by providing the benefit of having a stage race or a shorter event that's not an expedition race with, you actually provide that opportunity for people to push their own boundaries a little bit and allow people to opt not to do something if they're not ready. And often when there's a group of other people racing together, so especially in an all-female race, sometimes the females or the women will get together and they'll work together as a number of different teams to help all of them, achieve that success. And I think that's what I have seen happen, is that even though, I might think it's a bit too scary, but collectively with the whole group there, we can do this. And I think you get more of that if you can factor into your event some options so that it does push people's boundaries for those people that want to be going next level. And then the other things is, I suppose, in trying to give as much information out before and after about what level of skill you need to have for to do the event. So by sort of saying, it'll be 6 to 8 hours of racing each day. And part of, we're trying to do some newsletters where, again, trying to give some coaching tips or some ideas that can help people prepare for the event if they haven't ever done it before.
So clearly that you recognize that the pre-race recordings, the pre-race briefings and the information that you send out combined with all the other information there, it lowers the concern level of the participants. So therefore, when they get to the race, you removed a lot of those artificial barriers about like not knowing about the race, being concerned about safety. Like you've done your best to address these things along the way. And then race directors, who I have sympathy for sometimes, because there's always the Goldilocks effect, right? It just has to be hard enough to be challenging, but not so hard that it's a meat grinder or that you put people in unsafe situations. And that's always hitting a moving target. But to your point, giving the racer a sense of choice on the course is the biggest thing to do, because they could self-assess whether or not they should do that thing or not.
Yes, yeah. And look, definitely, in terms of when the event is on, when I, Jan and myself have done an event safety briefing before, you also then have to address the conditions at the time. And, we've had situations where in Queensland where it's been really, really, really hot and, people have been petrified that they're going to run out of water. And, sometimes, there's not always an opportunity to fill up at the TAs or you don't provide water. And it's, for a 6-hour race, it's often, your responsibility to get through the course and you might find, water at this spot. And, we will have that in our rules, but on the day we'll say, if you need water or if, we provide contingencies. And once, if we realise that everyone's running out of water, we'll make sure there's a water drop or a water stop. And then we just make sure that it's accessible and fair for everyone so that everyone has a fair option. We've had courses before when it's just been, totally flooded and had to change the whole, course around. And again, we've sent people out to make an assessment as, is it safe? And if so, sometimes we put an official somewhere so that every team can get a bit of support with something. So I think that's another really important thing about adventure racing is that I think all race directors want, I'd like to hope that your goal is to help everyone get from the start to the finish and be as successful as they want. We don't really want to be setting a course that's so hard that no one's going to finish. And, I think by feeling that you've had some success is going to be more encouraging to help you go back into the sport.
As we wrap up our time here together, anything that I didn't ask you that you want to say out loud about adventure racing or the Amazon's adventure, or anything that I may have left out?
Look, the only thing I would say is we would love to see some international athletes come to the Amazons Australia, and we would also love, to see some other women from maybe some other sports step out of their comfort zone and come and have a go at adventure racing. We think that we've got enough time to help some people, upskill themselves. So if you come from a paddling background to, learn how to ride and trek and do a bit of navigation, or if you come from a triathlon background to do some skills, or even if you come from, say, football or soccer, or we'd just love to see some women from some other sports to just have a go at adventure racing, because we just think it's such a great sport for life, and it's something that you can keep doing, after you're 20 or 30 and you might retire from one sport, you can keep doing it for a very long time.
Cracks me up when you talk about adventure racing as a retirement level sport. Well, thank you very much, Kim. Thanks for being here. Good luck with the race planning. We're going to follow, and we can't wait to see how it goes.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Brian.
Well, there you have it, folks. Another episode of The Dark Zone. Thanks, Kim, for coming on to the show. I personally love when your accent, which is lilting and beautiful and wonderful and screams adventure racing, bangs into my accent from the Bronx, which is, well, an accent from the Bronx. But hey, it was a good interview, and thanks for being here. Listeners, if you like what you're hearing over here in The Dark Zone, please head to your platform of choice and like, click, and subscribe. The algorithm likes when you do that, and it helps to spread the word about The Dark Zone and about adventure racing. So once again, thanks for being here, and as we always say, if you keep racing, we'll keep talking.